Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a countdown that literally dictates everything about our future. We're looking at the hard data, the projections, and the absolute reality facing our planet over the next 26 years. The countdown to 2050. The source material we're analyzing today doesn't mince words, and it lays out a timeline that is moving much, much faster than many of us realize.
Miami underwater. The Amazon rainforest, dead. Entire cities just gone. It's a remarkably bleak picture. We're so used to seeing shocking climate imagery, but sometimes just seeing the stark data laid out in plain text hits even harder. The scientists analyzing our climate aren't writing a sci-fi movie here. This is the projected reality based exactly on our current trajectory. Billions of people could become climate refugees, and yet, knowing all of this, the data shows we're just failing to stop it.
Which really brings up the million-dollar question, doesn't it? Why are we letting it happen? We have the data. We know the outcome. So why is our response so totally disconnected from the threat? That's the central paradox we're going to unpack as we walk through the exact timeline between now and 2050. But, to understand the why, we first need to get a firm grip on exactly where we stand today.
1.1 degrees Celsius. That single number is the total rise in global temperatures since 1880. Now, on paper, 1.1 degrees sounds like a rounding error, right? It seems incredibly small. But in the context of a delicate global ecosystem, it changes literally everything. Because of that tiny 1.1 degree bump, the Arctic ice sheet is currently 40% thinner than it was just 50 years ago. It's exactly why stronger hurricanes, longer droughts, and worse floods aren't anomalies anymore. They're just our new normal.
And that brings us to the immediate timeline, 2030, the critical decade. The scientific consensus is crystal clear here. We have exactly 6 more years to literally cut global carbon emissions in half. The mandate isn't just to reduce a little, and it definitely isn't to stabilize. We have to take a pair of scissors to our carbon output and slice it right down the middle. It's a monumental task, and the window to just plateau our emissions, that has firmly closed.
The gap between where we are right now and where we need to be is just massive. To hit that 2030 goal, renewable energy needs to account for 45% of all global power. But right now, it's sitting at only 12%. Closing that gap means we'd have to build the equivalent of thousands of new solar and wind farms, immediately. But here's the most alarming data point from the source. Between 2020 and 2024, global emissions actually went up. We're moving in the exact wrong direction, and we're accelerating while we do it.
So if we don't change course and close that massive gap by 2030, the source outlines what it bluntly calls the 2050 catastrophe scenario. This is a rapid-fire look at the consequences of inaction, and honestly, the projections here require our absolute attention.
By 2050, the Earth is projected to be 2.5 to 3 degrees Celsius warmer. Again, a deceptively small number with just devastating implications. Think back to 2020. That was the hottest year on record, right? Under a 2.5-degree rise, that deadly record-hot year of 2020 just becomes a normal, average year. Heat waves will become incredibly lethal, and death rates from heat will spike massively, especially in developing nations that just lack the infrastructure to survive those kinds of ambient temperatures.
Then there's the geographic devastation. Sea levels are projected to rise by 1 to 2 meters, and the source is incredibly direct about what this means. Entire nations will simply disappear beneath the waves. Island nations like the Maldives, Tuvalu, and Kiribati, they'll cease to exist. And it's not just remote islands either. We're talking about Miami, New York, Shanghai, Bangkok. The actual coastlines of the world will be fundamentally redrawn.
And that geographic devastation cascades directly into our basic survival needs. Crop production, it's going to collapse in a lot of regions. The American Midwest, for example, could face droughts that make farming completely impossible. That leads directly to skyrocketing food prices at your local grocery store and eventually outright global famines. Fresh water is going to become so scarce that wars will literally be fought over water, not oil. And ecologically, if insect populations die off, pollination stops. And without pollination, the entire food web just collapses.
All of which results in a staggering human toll. 1 billion. Let that sink in. 1 billion climate refugees fleeing flooded coasts, abandoned farmland, and totally uninhabitable heat zones. It's absolutely crucial to stress here that the source material makes this very clear. This isn't some wild dystopian guess. This is what climate scientists are predicting right now based purely on our current trajectory.
So we loop back to our original question. If we know all of this, why aren't we stopping it? Well, the source breaks it down into 4 main blockers. First is money. Fossil fuels generate trillions, which means immense lobbying power. Second is convenience. Let's face it, we love our cars, our cheap flights, our two-day plastic shipping, and changing that requires sacrifices most of us frankly don't want to make. Third is denial. Despite a 99.9% scientific consensus, denial is still a massive barrier. And fourth is distance. Climate change often feels like it's happening to other people, way out in the future, and that completely paralyzes us from acting right now.
And delaying action is incredibly dangerous because of what scientists call tipping points. This is the terrifying concept where the climate system crosses a specific threshold, and the whole process just becomes a self-sustaining, irreversible chain reaction. It's exactly like falling dominoes. We aren't just facing warming anymore. We're facing an unstoppable system collapse.
Here's how that domino effect actually plays out. It starts with the Amazon rainforest. It produces 20% of our oxygen, but if just 20 to 25% of it is destroyed, the whole ecosystem collapses. And get this, we're currently at 17%. That Amazon collapse accelerates Arctic ice melt. Without the white ice to reflect the sun, the dark ocean just absorbs the heat, speeding up the warming even more. That extra heat and fresh water then disrupts global ocean currents. If systems like the Gulf Stream slow down or stop, global weather patterns completely shatter, plunging some regions into deep freezes while others literally boil. But, okay, the explainer doesn't just leave us entirely with doom and gloom. It pivots us sharply to the systemic solutions we actually need to stop it. And these are actionable right now. We have to stop burning fossil fuels entirely. Not just reduce them, stop them. We need to plant 1 trillion trees to suck up existing carbon. We got to transition to 100% renewable energy, radically change factory farming, protect our remaining forests, and fundamentally reduce our overall consumption.
And look, we know systemic change is entirely possible. Take Costa Rica, for instance. They're currently running on 99% renewable energy. Denmark is at 81%. The technology absolutely works. The solutions exist today. The real problem is simply that these countries are the exceptions, while the rest of the world just continues with business as usual.
So how do you fit into this massive global puzzle? Well, you absolutely contribute through your lifestyle, using less energy, skipping fast fashion, eating less meat, flying less, and adopting green tech. But the source material is very strict on this next point. Individual actions alone aren't going to cut it. The ultimate keys to survival are systemic. That means voting for politicians who treat this like the absolute emergency it is and applying massive pressure on corporations to change.
However, we also have to face a really hard truth presented in the data. Even if we magically stopped all global emissions today, the carbon that's already in our atmosphere acts like a padlock. It locks in decades of continued warming. The planet is going to keep heating up for another 50 years based purely on what we've already done. We've essentially already locked in a certain degree of catastrophe.
Which means these next 6 years are the ultimate crossroads. We're literally standing at a fork in the road, choosing between a 2050 that is a manageable reality or a 2050 that is an absolute catastrophe. 2050 is going to be completely different from today. That is guaranteed. But the actual level of devastation is entirely up to how we manage this next half-decade.
Now let's move to a place of determination, because there are massive reasons for hope here. Renewable energy is currently the fastest-growing energy source on the entire planet. Solar and wind are actually cheaper than fossil fuels in most countries right now. Electric vehicles have gone completely mainstream, battery tech is improving exponentially, and we're inventing green solutions today that didn't even exist 10 years ago. We have the tech, we have a massive youth movement demanding change. Literally, the only thing we're lacking is the political will to deploy it all at scale.
Ultimately, our future comes down to this specific, unforgiving timeline. 2024 is where the choice is made, 2030 is when the critical decade ends, and by 2050, Earth's future is totally sealed. The actions we take in this exact, narrow window are going to dictate the next 200 years of human civilization. This isn't just about saving the rock we live on. I mean, the planet itself will survive. It's about saving human civilization as we know it.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative question from the source material. Will we act? Or will we just sit back and watch our world burn? It's a heavy question for sure, but it's an unavoidable one. I challenge you to think about how you can act. Share this explainer so others truly understand the timeline we're on, and recognize that shifting the political and corporate will of the world starts with the people in it, because the answer starts with you.